Aiden stepped through the dense foliage, the crunch of leaves and twigs underfoot the only sound in the quiet woods. Sunlight filtered through the canopy of trees, casting a warm glow on the forest floor. Aiden paused, taking a deep breath of the earthy, pine-scented air. He loved the peacefulness of these woods, the way they seemed to envelop him in a cocoon of tranquility. As he continued on, Aiden noticed something peculiar up ahead. A shimmering, translucent turtle seemed to be hovering in the air, its edges flickering like a mirage. "What the?" Aiden murmured, his brow furrowing in confusion. He approached the portal cautiously, his curiosity piqued. Reaching out a tentative hand, he was surprised to find that it passed through the shimmering surface without resistance. Glancing around to make sure he was still alone, Aiden took a deep breath and stepped forward, disappearing into the portal's embrace. The world around him shifted and blurred, and for a moment, Aiden felt a disorienting sense of weightlessness. Then, with a sudden jolt, he found himself standing in a completely different landscape, one that was both familiar and utterly alien. Aiden blinked, his eyes adjusting to the strange, otherworldly light that bathed the area. He had no idea where he was, but one thing was certain. He was no longer in the woods he had known. Aiden's eyes widened as he took in his surroundings. The landscape was unlike anything he had ever seen before. The sky was a deep iridescent purple, and the ground beneath his feet was covered in a strange, glittering substance that seemed to shift and shimmer with every step. Towering, crystalline structures rose up in the distance, their jagged edges catching the otherworldly light and refracting it in a dazzling display. "Where am I?" Aiden murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. He turned in a slow circle, trying to get his bearings, but everything was so foreign and unfamiliar that he felt utterly disoriented. A sudden movement in the corner of his eye caught his attention, and Aiden whirled around to see a strange bipedal creature approaching him. The creature was unlike anything Aiden had ever seen before, with a sleek, insectoid-like body and a head that seemed to be composed of a single glowing eye. "Greetings, traveler," the creature said, its voice a strange, melodic hum that seemed to reverberate through Aiden's very being. Aiden swallowed hard, his heart pounding in his chest. "Hello," he stammered, unsure of how to respond. "You are not from this world, are you?" the creature said, its eye narrowing slightly. Aiden shook his head, his mouth suddenly dry. "No, I don't know how I got here." The creature seemed to consider this for a moment, its eye flickering with what Aiden could only assume was a thoughtful expression. "Then you must learn to adapt." "Human," the creature said, its voice taking on a more serious tone. "For this is a world unlike any you have ever known, and the challenges you will face are unlike any you have ever encountered." Aiden felt a chill run down his spine, and he knew in that moment that his life had just taken an unexpected and perilous turn. Aiden stood alone, his eyes darting around the strange alien landscape. The creature had disappeared, leaving him to fend for himself in this bizarre world. His heart raced as he tried to make sense of his surroundings, the unfamiliar sights and sounds overwhelming his senses. "Okay, Aiden, think," he muttered to himself, running a hand through his hair. "You've got to find a safe place to rest and figure out what to do next." He began to walk, his steps cautious and uncertain, as he scanned the area for any sign of shelter or refuge. The ground beneath his feet was unlike anything he had ever experienced, a strange crystalline substance that seemed to shift and shimmer with every step. Aiden paused, bending down to examine it more closely. As he ran his fingers over the surface, he was surprised to find that it was surprisingly smooth and cool to the touch. "Fascinating," he murmured, his scientific curiosity momentarily overriding his sense of fear and uncertainty. Suddenly, a strange, high-pitched sound reached his ears, and Aiden whirled around, his heart pounding. In the distance, he could see a group of the strange insectoid creatures approaching, their glowing eyes fixed on him. "Oh, no," Aiden breathed, his mind racing as he tried to decide what to do. Without hesitation, he turned and began to run, his legs pumping as he searched desperately for a place to hide. Up ahead, he spotted a small crevice-like opening in the ground, and without a moment's hesitation, he dove inside, curling up in the darkness and holding his breath as the creatures passed overhead. Once the sound of their strange humming voices had faded, Aiden let out a shaky sigh of relief. "Okay, Aiden," he whispered to himself. "Time to figure out your next move." He settled back against the cool, smooth walls of the crevice, his mind already whirring with possibilities. Aiden emerged from his hiding place, his eyes wide with wonder as he took in the strange alien landscape that surrounded him. The towering, crystalline structures that had caught his attention earlier now seemed to loom over him, their jagged edges casting long, eerie shadows across the glittering ground. Cautiously, he began to explore, his footsteps crunching on the strange crystalline substance that covered the earth. As he walked, he couldn't help but marvel at the sheer beauty of this world, the way the light seemed to bend and refract through the crystal formations, creating a dazzling kaleidoscopic effect. "Incredible," he murmured, his fingers tracing the intricate patterns of one of the larger structures. Suddenly, a strange, high-pitched sound reached his ears, and Aiden froze, his heart pounding. In the distance, he could see a group of the insectoid creatures he had encountered earlier, their glowing eyes fixed on him. Aiden held his breath, his muscles tensing as he prepared to run. But to his surprise, the creatures simply passed by, seemingly uninterested in him. "Ah," he said, letting out a relieved sigh. "I guess they're not as hostile as I thought." Emboldened by this discovery, Aiden continued on, his curiosity leading him deeper into the strange alien world. The further he went, the more he noticed the subtle differences in the landscape, the way the crystal formations seemed to change in shape and color the farther he traveled. He paused to examine a particularly intricate structure, his fingers tracing the delicate, web-like patterns that adorned its surface. As he did so, a sudden, menacing growl reached his ears, and Aiden froze, his blood running cold. Slowly he turned, his eyes scanning the area for the source of the sound. What he saw next made his heart skip a beat. Aiden's heart pounded in his chest as he whirled around, his eyes widening in terror at the sight of the creature that had emerged from the shadows. It was a massive, hulking beast, its body covered in a thick, leathery hide, and its jaws gaping wide, revealing rows of razor-sharp teeth. "Oh God," Aiden breathed, his legs trembling as he took a step back. The creature let out a bone-chilling roar, its glowing eyes fixed on Aiden with a predatory intensity. Without hesitation, Aiden turned and ran, his feet pounding against the crystalline ground as he desperately searched for a place to hide. The beast gave chase, its heavy footsteps shaking the earth beneath Aiden's feet. Aiden's lungs burned as he ran, his heart racing with pure, unadulterated fear. Come on," he panted, his eyes darting around frantically. Up ahead, he spotted a narrow crevice in the ground, and without a moment's hesitation, he dove inside, pressing himself against the cool, smooth walls as the beasts thundered past. Aiden held his breath, his entire body trembling as he listened to the creature's snarls and growls echoing through the alien landscape. Finally, the sounds began to fade, and Aiden dared to peek out, his eyes scanning the area for any sign of the beast. It was gone, and Aiden let out a shaky sigh of relief, his legs nearly giving out from the adrenaline rush. That was too close, he murmured, his heart still pounding in his chest. Slowly he emerged from the crevice, his eyes darting around warily as he tried to catch his breath. Okay, Aiden, he said to himself. Time to find a safer place to rest and regroup. With a deep breath he set off, his steps more cautious and his senses on high alert. Aiden's legs trembled as he walked, the adrenaline from his encounter with the monstrous creature still coursing through his veins. His heart pounded in his chest, and he couldn't shake the image of those glowing, predatory eyes from his mind. What the hell was that? He muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. He glanced around nervously, half expecting the beast to come charging out of the shadows at any moment. The alien landscape seemed to close in around him, the towering crystal formations casting long, ominous shadows across the ground. Aiden shivered, wrapping his arms around himself in a futile attempt to ward off the chill that had settled deep in his bones. I need to find a safe place to rest, he said, his voice trembling. Somewhere I can catch my breath and figure out what to do next. He began to walk, his steps cautious and uncertain, his eyes constantly scanning the area for any sign of danger. As he moved, he couldn't help but marvel at the strange, otherworldly beauty of his surroundings, the way the light seemed to dance and refract through the crystal formations. If only this place wasn't so damn dangerous, he muttered, shaking his head. Suddenly, a faint glimmer of light caught his eye, and Aiden paused, squinting into the distance. There, in the distance, he could see the faint glow of what appeared to be a village, its structures illuminated by a soft, ethereal light. Could that be? Aiden murmured, his heart racing with a newfound sense of hope. Without hesitation, he set off towards the distant lights, his steps quickening with each passing moment. Well, maybe I'll find some answers there, he said, his voice tinged with a mixture of excitement and trepidation. As he drew closer, the village came into clearer focus, and Aiden couldn't help but feel a sense of relief wash over him. Aiden approached the village, his eyes wide with wonder and trepidation. The structures were unlike anything he had ever seen, their crystalline facades glowing with an otherworldly light. Hello? He called out, his voice echoing through the empty streets. Is anyone there? Silence. Aiden took a deep breath and continued forward, his senses on high alert. As he walked, he noticed the strange insectoid creatures he had encountered earlier moving about, their glowing eyes and melodic hums filling the air. Excuse me, Aiden said, approaching one of the creatures cautiously. I'm looking for someone who can help me. Can you point me in the right direction? The creature paused, its eye narrowing as it studied Aiden. You are not from this world, it said, its voice a strange musical hum. No, I'm not, Aiden replied, his heart pounding. I need to find someone who can help me understand this place and how to survive here. The creature seemed to consider this for a moment, then turned and gestured towards a towering structure in the distance. Speak with the wizard. He may be able to assist you. The wizard? Aiden asked, his brow furrowing in confusion. Yes, the creature replied. He is the wisest and most powerful being in our village. He will know what to do. Aiden nodded, a sense of relief washing over him. Thank you, he said, already turning towards the towering structure. As he approached the wizard's home, Aiden couldn't help but feel a sense of trepidation. What would this mysterious figure be like? Would he be able to help Aiden navigate this strange alien world? Steeling his nerves, Aiden reached out and knocked on the door, his heart pounding in his chest. The door swung open, and Aiden found himself face to face with a tall, robed figure, its face obscured by a deep hood. "Welcome, traveler," the wizard said, his voice a deep, resonant rumble. "I've been expecting you." "Come, Aiden," the wizard said, his deep voice resonating through the dimly lit chamber. "There is much for you to learn." Aiden followed the wizard deeper into the structure, his eyes wide with wonder and trepidation. "As you have seen, this world is a dangerous one," the wizard continued, his robed figure casting long shadows across the crystalline walls. "To survive, you must master the ways of magic and combat." Aiden nodded, his heart pounding in his chest. "I'm ready to learn," he said, his voice steady despite his nerves. "Good," the wizard replied, a hint of a smile in his voice. "Then let us begin." For the next several weeks, Aiden immersed himself in the wizard's teachings, learning the intricate workings of the strange alien magic that permeated this world. He practiced casting spells, honing his focus and control, and the wizard pushed him to his limits, challenging him with increasingly complex and dangerous tasks. "You must be prepared for anything," the wizard would say, his eyes narrowing behind his hood. "The creatures of this world are not to be trifled with." Aiden took the wizard's words to heart, and as his skills grew, so too did his confidence and determination. He learned to wield the crystalline structures around him as weapons, shaping them into blades and shields with the power of his mind. And when the wizard deemed him ready, he took Aiden out into the wilderness, teaching him the art of combat and survival. Aiden fought ferocious beasts, his magic and physical prowess working in tandem to overcome the challenges that arose. With each victory, he grew stronger, more resilient, and more attuned to the rhythms and patterns of this strange alien world. "You have done well, Aiden," the wizard said, his voice tinged with pride. "You are now ready to face whatever challenges this world may bring." Aiden stood tall, his eyes shining with a newfound sense of purpose and determination. "Then, let's not waste any more time," he said, his voice steady and resolute. "There's a lot of work to be done." Aiden stood before the wizard, his posture straight and his gaze unwavering. "You have learned well, my student," the wizard said, his deep voice resonating through the chamber. "I am proud of the progress you have made." Aiden nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of his lips. "Thank you, wizard. I couldn't have done it without your guidance." "Indeed," the wizard replied, his robed figure casting a long shadow across the crystalline floor. "But now, it is time for you to venture out on your own." Aiden felt a surge of excitement and trepidation at the wizard's words. "What challenges await me out there?" he asked, his brow furrowing with concern. "Many," the wizard said, his tone grave. "This world is a harsh and unforgiving place, Aiden. But I believe you are ready to face it." Aiden took a deep breath, steeling his nerves. "Then I am ready," he said, his voice steady and resolute. The wizard nodded, a hint of a smile playing at his lips. "I know you are. Go forth, Aiden, and may the power of the crystals guide your way." With a final nod, Aiden turned and made his way towards the exit, his steps filled with a newfound sense of purpose. As he stepped out into the alien landscape, he couldn't help but feel a surge of excitement and trepidation. The towering crystal formations glimmered in the strange ethereal light, and Aiden could feel the power of the world pulsing all around him. "Fine. All right," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Let's do this." With a deep breath, Aiden set out, his mind racing with the possibilities that lay ahead. He knew that the challenges he would face would be unlike anything he had ever encountered, but he was ready. Aiden's eyes narrowed with determination as he strode forward, his magic and combat skills at the ready. Whatever lay in store, he was prepared to face it head on. Aiden took a deep breath, his eyes scanning the alien landscape that stretched out before him. The wizard's words echoed in his mind, a constant reminder of the challenges that lay ahead. "I'm ready," he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. With a renewed sense of purpose, Aiden set out, his steps sure and his gaze unwavering. The crystalline structures that dotted the terrain glimmered in the strange ethereal light, casting long shadows across the ground. Aiden's senses were on high alert, his eyes constantly scanning for any sign of danger. As he walked, he couldn't help but marvel at the sheer beauty of this world, the way the light seemed to bend and refract through the crystal formations. "What are you? Focus, Aiden," he reminded himself, shaking off the momentary distraction. The path ahead was treacherous, with jagged rocks and uneven terrain that threatened to trip him up at every turn. But Aiden pressed on, his magic and combat skills at the ready, prepared to face whatever challenges came his way. Time seemed to blur as he walked, his legs growing weary, and his breath coming in short, ragged gasps. Just when he thought he couldn't go any further, a clearing came into view, its smooth, crystalline surface glimmering in the distance. Finally, Aiden breathed, a surge of relief washing over him. With a renewed burst of energy, he pushed forward, his steps quickening as he approached the clearing. As he stepped into the open space, Aiden felt a sense of peace wash over him, the tension in his muscles finally beginning to ease. He sank to the ground, his back against one of the towering crystal formations, and allowed himself a moment of rest. Aiden's eyes narrowed as he approached the towering, jagged entrance to the lair. He could feel the power emanating from within, a palpable energy that sent a shiver down his spine. "So, this is where the powerful monsters make their home," he murmured, his grip tightening on the crystalline staff the wizard had gifted him. Steeling his nerves, Aiden stepped forward, his senses on high alert. The moment he crossed the threshold, a deafening roar echoed through the cavernous space, and Aiden found himself face to face with a massive, hulking creature. Its glowing eyes burned with a primal fury, and its jaws gaped wide, revealing rows of razor-sharp teeth. "Well, hello there," Aiden said, his voice betraying a hint of trepidation. "I was hoping to find you." The creature let out another earth-shaking roar, its massive claws swiping at Aiden with blinding speed. Aiden reacted instinctively, his staff flashing with a brilliant crystalline light as he deflected the attack. "Not so fast, my friend," he said, his eyes narrowing with determination. The creature let out a guttural snarl and lunged forward, its massive bulk crashing against the walls of the lair. Aiden danced around the beast, his staff a blur as he struck with precision and power, his magic amplifying the force of his blows. The creature howled in pain and fury, its attention divided as more of its kind emerged from the shadows, their eyes glowing with a primal hunger. "Ah, so you've brought some friends," Aiden said, his lips curving into a grim smile. "Well, the more the merrier." With a flick of his wrist, Aiden summoned a barrage of crystalline shards, each one hurtling towards the monsters with deadly accuracy. The creatures roared and thrashed, their massive bodies crashing against the walls as they tried in vain to escape the onslaught. Aiden pressed his advantage, his magic and combat skills working in perfect harmony as he systematically dispatched one monster after another. Aiden's steps were heavy as he approached the small village, his body weary from the battles he had fought. The towering crystal formations that had once filled him with wonder now seemed to loom over him, a constant reminder of the dangers that lurked in this strange alien world. "I need to rest," he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. As he entered the villagers eyed him with a mixture of curiosity and trepidation. "Greetings, stranger," one of the villagers, a tall, slender creature with glowing eyes, said. "What brings you to our humble abode?" "I'm in need of a place to rest," Aiden replied, his voice hoarse. "I've been traveling for days, and He paused, searching for the right words. "I'm exhausted." The villager nodded, a hint of sympathy in their gaze. Of course. Come, we have a small inn where you can stay." Aiden followed the villager through the winding streets, his eyes taking in the sights and sounds of the village. The buildings were made of the same crystalline material that covered the ground, their intricate designs casting a mesmerizing play of light and shadow. As they approached the inn, Aiden could hear the murmur of voices and the clinking of what sounded like glasses. "Here we are," the villager said, gesturing towards the doorway. "Rest well, stranger. You look like you've been through a lot." Aiden nodded his thanks and stepped inside, his senses immediately assaulted by the warmth and energy of the inn. He found a quiet corner and settled into a plush crystalline chair, his muscles finally beginning to relax. This is just what I needed," he sighed, closing his eyes for a moment. But as he sat there, a nagging feeling began to creep into the back of his mind. Something was wrong. He could feel it in the air, a sense of unease that seemed to permeate the entire village. Aiden stood before the towering, ominous castle, its jagged spires reaching up towards the swirling purple sky. The air around him was thick with a palpable sense of dread, and Aiden could feel the hairs on the back of his neck standing on end. "So, this is where the Dark Lord makes his home," he murmured, his grip tightening on the crystalline staff that the wizard had gifted him, steeling his nerves. Aiden began to make his way towards the castle's imposing entrance, his steps measured and cautious. As he drew closer, he could feel the power emanating from the structure, a dark and ancient energy that seemed to seep into his very bones. "I have to do this," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, "for the sake of this world and all who live in it." The massive, ornate doors loomed before him, and Aiden paused, taking a deep breath to steady his nerves. "Here goes nothing," he muttered, and with a push the doors swung open, revealing a cavernous, dimly lit chamber beyond. Aiden stepped inside, his senses on high alert as he scanned the room for any sign of the Dark Lord. The chamber was eerily silent, save for the faint echo of his footsteps against the crystalline floor. "I know you're here," Aiden called out, his voice echoing through the space. "Show yourself, coward." A deep, rumbling chuckle reverberated through the chamber, and Aiden whirled around to see a towering figure emerging from the shadows. "Welcome, young Aiden," the Dark Lord said, his voice a deep, resonant growl. "I've been expecting you." Aiden's eyes narrowed as he faced the Dark Lord, his staff at the ready. "Then you know why I'm here." The Dark Lord's lips curled into a sinister grin. "Indeed, I do, and I'm afraid I can't let you leave this place alive." Aiden's footsteps echoed through the cavernous throne room as he approached the Dark Lord's towering, crystalline throne. The air was thick with a palpable sense of power and malevolence, and Aiden could feel the hairs on the back of his neck standing on end. "So, you've finally decided to grace me with your presence," the Dark Lord rumbled, his deep voice reverberating through the chamber. Aiden's grip tightened on his staff, his eyes narrowing as he faced the imposing figure. "Your reign of terror ends here, Dark Lord." The Dark Lord let out a bone-chilling laugh, his glowing eyes fixed on Aiden with a predatory intensity. "You are a fool to think you can defeat me." With a flick of his wrist, the Dark Lord summoned a swirling vortex of dark energy, the very air crackling with its power. Aiden braced himself, his staff glowing with a brilliant crystalline light as he prepared to meet the onslaught. The two forces collided in a blinding display of power, the very foundations of the castle trembling under the strain. Aiden gritted his teeth, his muscles straining as he poured every ounce of his strength into the struggle. The Dark Lord's attacks were relentless, his dark magic lashing out with a ferocity that Aiden had never encountered before. But Aiden refused to back down, his determination fueling his magic and driving him forward. With a final earth-shattering surge of power, Aiden unleashed a devastating barrage of crystalline shards, each one striking the Dark Lord with unerring precision. What? The Dark Lord howled in agony, his massive form crumpling to the ground as the light of his eyes began to fade. Aiden stood over the fallen figure, his chest heaving, his eyes filled with a mixture of triumph and sorrow. "It's over," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "Your reign of terror is at an end." The Dark Lord's lips curled into a faint, twisted smile. "Perhaps," he rasped, his voice barely above a whisper, "but the darkness will never truly be vanquished." With those final words, the Dark Lord's eyes closed, and his body went limp, the last vestiges of his power fading into the shadows. The streets of the once oppressed city were alive with the sounds of celebration, as the people gathered to honor the hero who had vanquished the Dark Lord. Aiden stood at the center of the throng, his shoulders squared, and his gaze filled with a newfound sense of purpose. "Today, we celebrate the end of a dark era," he proclaimed, his voice ringing out with authority. "The tyranny of the Dark Lord is no more." The crowd erupted into thunderous cheers, their voices echoing through the crystalline structures that surrounded them. Aiden raised a hand, silencing the din. "But our work is not yet done," he continued, his eyes sweeping over the assembled throng. "We must now rebuild and forge a new future for this land." The people listened, their faces alight with hope and determination. "As your king," Aiden said, the weight of his words settling over the crowd, "I vow to lead us into a new era of prosperity and peace." A hush fell over the crowd, and Aiden could feel the weight of their trust and expectation upon his shoulders. "Together, we will heal the wounds of the past and create a world where all can live in harmony," he said, his voice filled with conviction. The people erupted into cheers once more, their cries of joy and adulation filling the air. Aiden stood tall, his gaze sweeping over the throng, a sense of purpose and determination burning in his heart. "This is our kingdom," he said, his voice ringing out with authority, "and we will build it anew, brick by brick, until it shines like the very crystals that adorn our land." The people roared their approval, their voices mingling with the sounds of celebration that echoed through the streets. Aiden turned, his eyes fixed on the horizon, and he knew that the challenges that lay ahead would be great. But with the unwavering support of his people, he was ready to face them head-on. This was his kingdom, and he would do whatever it took to ensure its prosperity and the well-being of all who called it home.